Welcome back to the show, everyone. So, on today's episode, we're going to be diving into a little bit more of my week and what it looked like. And on this episode, I'm sharing a personal game changer in our house, which was Potty Learning Week. And no, this is not a parenting podcast, but this was a big thing for us. We didn't leave the house for 3 days, and it may sound pretty normal, but let me tell you, this was a marathon of focus, patience, and a little bit of logistics. And the biggest part was, and this is where the glucose glow up comes in, is I wasn't going to cave into convenience foods like the drive-through burgers, frozen pizzas, bagels, or those like Hungry Man frozen dinners. I don't even know if those are still a thing, but they were when I was growing up. And I knew if I didn't plan our meals ahead of time, we'd end up eating a bunch of junk and things that just wouldn't make us feel great. So I did what I do best, and I made a plan to prep meals and snacks for the days ahead. And this way, I could focus on helping my daughter with potty training without spending half my time in the kitchen. It was a little chaotic, but it worked. So I want to dive into how I made that happen and how I kept things mostly balanced. And I got a lot of feedback on people liking to hear how I think through these things, like our trips and traveling. And now I want to give you a little bit of an inside look on just kind of a normal week at home. So let's get into today's episode. I'm Caitlin, and your host of the Glucose Glow Up Show. I'm a natural researcher and girl mama who dove into metabolic health research to heal my insulin resistance, all with the hopes of growing our family. Now I'm here to give you an inside look on how I achieved my glucose glow up and to share my journey with you so we all can achieve optimal health. I know we all want to be healthy, but with so much noise out there, it's hard to know where to start. Whether you're trying to start or grow your family, improve your fasting glucose or A1C, or just learn how I'm biohacking my health for longevity, you're in the right place. Let's get glowing. To start, I want to talk about sort of the prepping and the planning for, I'm calling Potty Learning Week here, okay? So, first things first, if you've been listening to this podcast for a little bit or following some of my glucose glow up stuff on social media or email, you know, I'm a big planner and researcher. I'm not someone who says, I'm kind of going to do this. Like when I commit, I go all in. So, potty learning, I treated this like a major project. I did my research. I even took a course. I read some books because let's face it, toddlers are unpredictable and I wanted to be ready for whatever came our way. And the internet is just full of knowledge and just things like information is just so readily accessible. And if someone has already gone through a process that worked really well, I want to do that. And so I had several processes from other moms as well that worked. So I'm like, I'm going to do the research and see what happened. Once we had the date circled on the calendar, this is when we're going to do potty training, this is when it's happening. I knew I needed a solid plan to get through that week. So I put the date on the calendar about a month or so in advance, maybe a little bit more than that. And so I knew I had the date. It was on the calendar for a while. I was staring at the calendar thinking, all right, it's coming. It's so far away, but it's going to come really quickly at the end of the summer. And so, anyone who has gone through this, any parents out there, you know those first few days of potty training are intense, like next level exhausting. Like, if you're going all in, it is exhausting. So, the last thing I wanted was to be scrambling for meals or giving in to junk food. If you're not a parent, you've never potty trained or really have no experience in this, let's just compare this to your busiest, craziest week and something else. Maybe you got a home project going on or something. Just think about this as like your super intense week where you're so focused on something at home and you don't even have time to run out to the store or whatever it is. Like let's just like think about that week right now. That's how I felt. We weren't leaving the house. We were staying put. That was that. Here's how I broke it down. I just took my notebook out, literally just scribbled out the days of the week, planning meals for each day. This does not have to be fancy. If you're like a spreadsheet kind of person, you could do that. I don't know what it is for me, but writing things down and then I like cross things out or okay, I'm gonna like move that meal to this day. It's just like a bunch of arrows and stuff. So for me, it's just like how my brain works. I just enjoy writing it down. I think like because I'm on the computer so much that it just helps for me to not have it on the computer and like also sometimes I'll like jot things down in the notes app on my phone. So if I'm thinking of something or I need a grocery list or whatever, like I'll have like ideas on my phone and I can like pull from there, but it's not like normally the primary place that I start to plan. So the goal was to cook meals that were easy to prep ahead of time, double or triple batch if necessary, so that I could like stretch out the leftovers. And I also wanted meals I wouldn't get sick of eating 2 or 3 times because let's be real, I used to meal prep like in very intensely. And by the time we got to the end of the week, I felt like I was wasting things because I was just so sick of eating them. So if you've ever sort of meal prepped, maybe you can, understand that experience. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to be sick of the food. So I also had to kind of plan around my daughter's preschool days so I wouldn't be overwhelmed. And I wasn't talking about anything fancy here. I just wanted like good, solid meals. I was planning for comforting but healthy options, stuff that would keep us full but not send us on a glucose roller coaster, right? And I picked these certain foods because it's like, all right, I'm going to be so tired. And what do you want when you get tired? You just want carbs and you want comfort food and you want that warm pasta and cheese and stuff like that. I'm from Wisconsin, so lots of cheese, right? So like it just feels comforting. So I planned for food that I would enjoy and feel comfort in eating that, but still like glucose friendly for the most part. Okay. And I also factored in snacks too, because, well, I need snacks to keep me going in between all the craziness. And, my toddler needs a snack like every other minute. Like she just ate and she's hungry again. So I just needed a lot of snacks. And I knew it was going to be stressful. So I just needed something I could pull out. And I was really trying hard not to just go and buy a bunch of packaged snacks. I wanted things that would fuel us through this process without leaving me super sluggish afterwards. So that's sort of like setting the stage for how we got through the plan here. All right, so let's talk about food. The day before potty learning officially began, remember I put the date on the calendar. I made a meal that I knew would reheat well and still taste great, and we all like it. And we did zucchini enchiladas. So I made a triple batch, knowing we were going to have that multiple times during the week for either dinner or lunch. And yes, my husband looked at me like I was an absolute crazy lady when I came home with like 12 plus zucchinis because we needed more, right? And I will admit, living with me is not easy. I look crazy sometimes, but I always have a plan. And there was a reason for all these zucchinis. We were going to use them. It was going to be great. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. Another thing I did was I enlisted help from my parents. They kindly brought us a meal. Shout out to them for helping. And I was joking. It feels like it was prepping for a newborn, except with potty training. And I honestly think this might have been more intense. I mean, someone can correct me on that, but for me personally, it felt very intense. So, Tuesday night, this was the night before potty learning started. I made a ton of those zucchini boat enchiladas and we did a side of corn. So essentially, I just use the zucchini as like the container for the enchilada. I don't use like tortillas or anything. Just carve out a little bit of the zucchini and then put the enchilada sauce meat mixture inside, bake it in the oven with some cheese, and then corns are like kind of starchy veggie side. So that's what we do. Sometimes I do rice. This time I did corn. I kind of just like more of the veggies. Sometimes rice isn't as glucose friendly for me. I do like wild rice. That's another option that you could have as well. And the cool part was I actually, again, crazy lady status. I made way too much meat. I made too much for like how many zucchinis I had, which was shocking, right? So I was actually able to use that meat and I froze it and then we actually had it like a couple weeks later we had like 2 more full meals with that extra meat. So that was a total lifesaver during all the chaos because obviously the last thing I wanted to do was cook from scratch. And then even beyond that, I had meals. So super, super fun to kind of see that kind of all playing out. Well, I can break down a little bit more on breakfast. So for me personally, on day one, lately I've been doing like a pretty standard like protein shake with protein powders, banana, peanut butter, whole milk. So I kind of just wanted to start pretty simple. And the mornings also get sort of crazy. So I just want something that's like a go-to. Other staples that, my daughter and husband and I also eat eggs, and I've got some homemade sourdough with avocado on there, yogurt and peanut butter and pure Elizabeth granola are staples. So my daughter loves bananas too. I will take it as long as she eats whole foods, which is most of her diet. So did that. And then day one, we did the leftover zucchini enchiladas. In the afternoon of day one, we're still on day one here. I prepped some snacks. I didn't have time earlier in the week, so I had planned, it was sort of in my plan on Sunday that I was going to prep some snacks. And then my parents were going to be there as well, so I had a little bit of extra help. So I knew that I was going to be able to pull that off a little bit easier. So I prepped some oatmeal balls with peanut butter and then some muffins that I talked about in a previous episode as well. Those are toddler approved and they are high protein. And then I also whipped up a batch of everything bagel dip that I could use for veggies. I cut up fresh veggies and a little melon as well. Oh, all right. So we're making the snacks and I gotta like have a brief intermission here. We had a little bit of a family emergency on day one of potty learning. I ended up taking my dog to the emergency vet. Long story short, he swallowed one of the silicone muffin cups with the muffin hole. He's a chocolate lab. He just eats everything. And I was so checked because I'm like, I'm not leaving the house. This is not happening. But he's a known counter surfer. We know this. We've just had a really hard time breaking him of this problem. And I stepped away for a second and there it goes. So no shortage of excitement around here. So you got me. I did leave the house during these 3 days, but it was not a fun outing by any means. It was not the plan, but went to the vet and came right back because, of course, I had a plan in place. So yes, it was awful and it derailed things, but it really didn't in the grand scheme of things because I came back and we already had what we were going to eat, right? So having the plan really helps even on these crazy weeks for us, right? Because we can fall back on the plan and sometimes there's a plan B, but it still all works out. So because my parents were over that day, they had brought us a meal. So they brought us sloppy joes and some chips and salad. And it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfectly balanced. I will admit that. But considering we had this emergency, it was a relief to have a meal ready to go when I got back home with Teddy. So that was that. We also, I mean, like we did get the fiber from the veggies in the salad, and there was veggies in the sloppy joes. So it was fine. It was a good meal. It was warm and comforting, and we can't be perfect all the time. So we're gonna go into day two. Day two was not nearly as exciting as day one, so it gets maybe a little bit more boring, right? So I had my usual breakfast with the protein shake, leftover sloppy joes, and then for dinner we grilled hamburgers and we also made a bunch of hamburgers. So we had hamburgers for a few more meals. So that was part of the plan too, that we were going to grill out and there would be one grilling session that would serve multiple meals. So I opted for no bun here because I did do the bun with the sloppy joes and I was just trying to kind of even things out a little bit for myself. I don't always use the bun with hamburgers, but we did do the Alexia French fries in the air fryer. I like that brand a lot, so I had a little bit of that, and then I made a pesto arugula salad. So I just made a really big batch of that, so that also would carry us through the week. A lot of good fiber and healthy fats in there to keep us full. So love that salad. Day three, breakfast, pretty standard. We had the leftover hamburgers, the arugula salad, and the Alexia fries. That was all ready to go. And then my next meal, dinner that night, was my ultimate favorite, Cobb salad. I mean, I probably do it a little bit different than some people, but if you know me, this is a fun fact. I could eat a Cobb salad literally every day if you let me. So good, so much fiber, good healthy fats. And I love ranch dressing. There's just nothing better than that. I'm still working on perfecting like a homemade version, so that's still coming. But it was just really nice to have this because it's light and refreshing, but like really filling. I love avocado. I love getting all the good fiber in there and bacon and hard-boiled eggs and chicken. We usually do cucumbers and like shredded carrots. So just so good. So if you need like a really good like no bake recipe, it's a Cobb salad. And my secret on hard-boiled eggs is I actually put them in the air fryer now. So I know it's so weird, but it works so well. And ever since someone told me this a few years ago, I tried it and they come out great every time. So that's a little hack for you if you're into hard-boiled eggs. All right, we made it to day 4. We were doing super well. We sort of made it through the potty learning experience, the like kind of jump start, right? So, woohoo, we celebrated with donuts for a mid-morning snack on day 4. This was marking our second like outing out of the house. We had gone to the park that morning. Super successful. Shout out to all the parents out there that have done this before me. So, lunch was our Cobb salad again. I mean, it's great. You just mix all the stuff together. And from the night before, I had everything pretty much cooked, right? So like chicken was ready, eggs were ready, bacon was all ready to go. So the lunch with the Cobb salad was actually even easier than the night before because I'd prepped a lot of it. And then one of the final meals that I had planned for was a BLT, and I had egg and avocado. So we did the BLT, and I love Ezekiel bread, so we did that, toasted that, and then kind of put everything together. And we did the side with the carrots and peppers and cucumbers we had prepped with the everything bagel dip. So that was a nice little meal there. And then by the end of the week, I was really happy with how we managed. Sure, we had donuts and a few chips, but really overall, we stuck to the plan even in the middle of a family emergency. We didn't ever need to run to the store, not even once. We had plenty of leftovers, and I spent really minimal time in the kitchen. So overall, this was a super big win in a crazy week for us. Just like reflecting on my crazy week and balancing my glucose levels. Is there some things that I would do differently? Probably. But overall, I was really pleased with how the week turned out, despite the extra challenges, like I said, and it's easy to say, like, I'll always have a perfectly balanced meal, but I'm here to be real with you guys, and it's just not how life is. The goal isn't perfection, but it's balance most of the time. And when you've got balance in the day to day, you have some flexibility to go enjoy that donut or have the burger or sloppy joes with the bun without throwing everything off. And my takeaway from this week is that when I stick to a plan, even if it's a loose plan, it really just makes all the difference for me. I was less stressed about food and I could just be more present for my daughter. And it just showed me that even during the busy, messy weeks, you can still find ways to nourish yourself and your family without relying on ultra processed, convenient foods. And I'll admit, during the last few years, convenience food has been it's been in our house more than I want to admit. So it's like the pre-made store stuff. It's just cropped into our life a lot more than I'd like. So it's sometimes better fed than not, but it's not always something I feel super great about. So having this plan just really helped me overall. Here are my top tips for busy weeks, just kind of rounding things out. When you don't have hours to spend in the kitchen, this is sort of what I would do, if you can. Enlist help. Don't be afraid to ask family or friends to bring over a meal or help prep some food ahead of time. My parents had that meal for us, and it was a total lifesaver. This other thing I've heard of is I've never done this, but I've heard of neighbors like swapping food where one person like makes several batches of the same thing and then all the families sort of swap. So maybe that's something to consider. Like I said, I've never done this, but if there's families in similar phase of life to you, maybe this could be something interesting to test out. Double batch and freeze things. So in the days leading up to the crazy week, I made the double batches. I froze what I could to make enough for leftovers, and it saved me a ton of time. Like I said, I made all that extra enchilada meat and froze the extra, and we had them again a little later when we had a busy night. I just pulled that out. So that was super nice. Prep snacks while making dinner. I'm like notorious for making a huge mess in the kitchen when I cook. Just ask my husband. So I've started using that time to also prep snacks too. Like while dinner is in the oven, I'll throw some muffins in or cut up veggies for the next day because I'm already making a mess. So I might as well make a bigger mess is my philosophy. So because it's like once I clean the kitchen, I don't want to then go and like make a mess with snacks and stuff. So I try not to do that. But you can always kind of like find things to like make and prep while you're making the mess already, if that makes sense. Okay, next, plan meals you actually enjoy. Comfort food doesn't have to be unhealthy. When days are long, you want meals that are not only good for you, but also something you actually look forward to eating. So maybe you look for alternatives to things you love at a restaurant and see how you can recreate them at home so you can control the ingredients a little bit more. And lastly, just make realistic choices. You know, like that meme about the person who like does the grocery shopping and the person who's hungry at home, like not being the same person? That's me. Of course, I'll go buy all the healthy stuff. And then a few days later, I'll be like, well, we have like literally nothing here I want to eat. So it's sort of planning meals that are both healthy and like something you're really going to crave too. Because if you don't like what you're eating, that's not really fun either. And that's not what this is about. So that's how I prepped for potty learning week and stayed mostly balanced. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. So thanks for tuning in. And if you're navigating a busy season or need some extra support, take these tips and apply them. I know you've got this. In the end, it's really just about finding what works for you and your family, planning ahead to minimize stress, and knowing that sometimes or maybe always, life is messy, and that's okay. Just remember when we have balance most of the time, we can handle the craziness that comes with these unique situations. So, thanks for listening to today's episode. And if you've been through a similar experience or have some tips to share, I'd love to hear them. And please subscribe or share this podcast with someone you think might enjoy it.